has anybody, besides the people that I interacted with, heard of a concept called the butterfly effect? The butterfly effect says that a butterfly can flap its wings here in Kansas and literally change weather patterns across the globe. Edward Lorenz in 1961 came up with the butterfly effect, and it was laughed out of all sorts of scientists, associations, laughed out of all sorts of groups. But they started studying this, and they started studying it more, and they realized that it proved itself out every time. That the butterfly effect works in our life. It actually became a law in the early 1990s. Just like the law of gravity, you cannot break it, you can only confirm it. And it works with us. Everything you do matters. Or everything you don't do matters. So if I look back and say, who's responsible for this? There's a lot of credit that can go around the room, but maybe it was a guy by the name of Chris Lyon. Chris Lyon introduced me to Stephanie Webb. From that came the vision of the Jayhawk Way and what it is that we're doing today. So maybe Chris should be taking the credit. Unless it was a guy by the name of Rod Johnson. Rod Johnson, I did a project at Farmers Insurance. He introduced me to a guy by the name of Chris Lyon, who introduced me to Stephanie Webb, that got us here. So if you think about it, it's really Rod Johnson that should take the credit for what we're doing here today. Unless it was a guy by the name of Michael St. Lawrence. Michael St. Lawrence I met in the early 2000s, and we did a big project at AOL Time Warner, who introduced me to a VP by the name of Rod Johnson, who then Rod Johnson went to Farmers Insurance, and introduced me to a guy by the name of Chris Lyon, who introduced me to Stephanie. So really, if you think about it, it's Michael St. Lawrence. Michael St. Lawrence should really be here, and we should be honoring him for everything that happened today. Unless there's a guy by the name of Mark Norman. Mark Norman in 2000 introduced me to a guy out in LA by the name of Michael St. Lawrence, who introduced me to Rod Johnson, who introduced me to Chris Lyon, who introduced me to Stephanie, who came full circle, worked on the project. So if you really think about it, it's Mark Norman who should take the credit. Unless it was my father who, when he got out of this business and he sold and moved on, he told me that I need to go work for the Dale Carnegie organization. So I went to work for the Dale Carnegie organization, who Mark Norman owned the franchise. And then Mark Norman introduced me to Michael St. Lawrence, which introduced me to Rod Johnson, which introduced me to Chris Lyon, which introduced me to Stephanie Webb. So really, my father should take the credit for it. Unless there's a guy by the name of Dale Carnegie who wrote a book in 1936 called How to Win Friends and Influence People. My dad gave me that book when I was 14 years old. So really, in 1936, Dale Carnegie was flapping his butterfly wings, if you think about it. How far back can we go? More importantly, how far forward can we go? Everything you do or don't do matters. And so what are we going to do, as Vince mentioned, as everybody's mentioned up here, moving forward? That's going to take ourselves, our departments, this organization, society. It's actually law. Again, you cannot break it. You can only confirm it, like the law of gravity. If I were to get up on the Murphy building and jump off, would I break the law of gravity? No. I would confirm it. Same thing. It's called sensitive dependency upon initial conditions. That's the butterfly effect. If you look it up. Edward Lorenz, 1961. So what we do every single day matters. So I said this in the Success Committee. I don't hope that you take this and run with it. I don't hope that you take these skills and you use these tools and you do the memory stack. And I don't hope for any of that. I expect it. As a matter of fact, you can expect the same from me, because everything you do will impact me, my son who's going to grow up in society, my beautiful wife, my team, yourselves, the clients that we have. So maybe we should all make sure that we're setting the right expectation with ourselves and others around us to continue to grow this thing and move this thing forward. Second point I want to talk to you about is success versus significance. I don't think this project was a success alone. I think there was a lot of significance behind it. I've been on a mission for the past 8 to 12 months to study success versus significance and what it really means. Success is very impactful to me. It's very selfish, as a matter of fact. And I've worked my whole life to be successful, what I thought was successful. I wanted to have a successful business, and I wanted to be successful financially, and I wanted to have successful things, and I wanted people to look at me. And then when I was waving from the mountaintops, I realized that there was an empty feeling. I've done all that, and I've had success in my life, but it still wasn't impactful because I didn't have significance. Significance is now, what can I do that impacts others? So that's my life mission, is to be significant. You can be successful in life. And there's nothing wrong with being successful without having significance. I'm a living example of it. But you cannot have significance without being successful. So I've studied it, I've looked at it, and John Maxwell, who's a guru in leadership, helped me define it. 4 things to be significant. Number 1, I want to do things that make a difference. That's the first level. Number 2, I want to surround myself with people that want to make a difference. Because not everybody wants to make a difference. And if they don't, that's fine. Some of you have heard me say this before. You either get on the train or you wave goodbye as it leaves the station, because it doesn't slow down and it never backs up. So I want to make a difference, and I want to work with people that want to make a difference. Level 3 is doing things that make a difference. So when I got to level 3, I said, I'm here. I want to make a difference with people that want to make a difference, doing things that make a difference. And I thought I'd arrived. But then I realized there's a level 4. At the time, it makes a difference. So I want to make a difference with people that want to make a difference, doing things that make a difference. At the time, it makes a difference. So if you think about it, the Jayhawk way, the first sort of charge, it was successful. But one can make an argument it was even more significant. Because we made a difference with people that wanted to make a difference, doing things that made a difference at the time right here at KUMC that it needed to happen. So everybody's significant in this process moving forward. And the question is, what are we going to do to continue to make it significant as we move forward? Big round of applause to you guys. Thank you for all the stuff that you guys have done. As Adam mentioned, there's a final charge, and I guess the final charge to me is, as I look around here, that opportunity has never been more prevalent for you and what it is you do, and the opportunity to speak, and the opportunity to look at things differently, and the opportunity to say, well, I know we've always done it that way, but what if there's a new way? It reminds me, I was recently on a cruise ship with my wife, Sarah, and we had been out that night at an event. I gave a talk on a cruise ship, and I took my wife, and we'd been out that night at an event, at a ceremonial thing. We got back to the room, and I remember I said, I'm hungry. And she said, well, order some cabin service. So I looked at the menu at cabin service, and I think after 12 or 12:30 or whatever the time was, there just wasn't a lot on the menu. So I said, well, there's nothing I want. And I just kept saying this for like 15 minutes. She said, I'm hungry. And then we laid down, and all the lights went off, and I kept saying, I'm hungry. So my wife finally pops up, and my wife, when she's sleeping or trying to sleep, the last thing she wants is anybody to bug her, especially this guy. And she finally popped up with her head out, and she whipped her head, and she said, go to the Lido deck. And I said, the Lido deck? If you've ever been on a cruise ship, you know the Lido deck has food 24/7, right? She said, quit complaining and just get up and go to the Lido deck, because there's food up there. And as I think about it, the Lido deck has never been more prevalent in this organization. The Lido deck's wide open. The question is, are we going to sit there like I did and keep saying I'm hungry, or are we going to get up and go to the Lido deck and take advantage of the opportunity that's in front of us, and take advantage of not only of the past 9 months, but the next 9 months as the next wave goes through, and take advantage of everything around what you do, what you impact, inside and outside these walls, to make a difference. Be significant. Continue to move forward. Thanks for everything, guys. I wish you the best of luck moving forward.